So this week's art journaling page is on my blog that was published last week on Psalm 104, 33, and 34, and it talks about the meditations of our heart being pleasing to God. And I wanted to do a page on this reminder of how the things that we focus on are the things that we tend to see. So if we focus on the good, we're going to see the good. And if we focus on the bad, we're going to see the bad in life. So I think that God is pleased when we focus on all of the good things that He shows us in life and the silver linings, if you will. And I know right now with everything crazy that's going on in the world, we have a tendency to be worried and fearful. But the truth is that we've been able to slow life down. And because we've been able to slow life down, we now get to focus on and see some of the things that we may not have noticed before this when we were super busy and living hustle and bustle every day. So this week, my grandson, who's 2, said, "Gaga, let's go play bubbles." And I told him, I said, "We don't have any bubbles." And he ran across the yard and he grabbed a dandelion and he blew it with his little breath, and the leaves went everywhere, and he said, "Bubbles." And I just couldn't help but just smile and remember that in the moment I got to enjoy that. And had I been busy with work and all of the other things that are normally going on, I may not have gotten to experience this moment of innocence with him. And so I really wanted to remember that let's blow my bubble moment that I had with him this week. And so that's what this page is about, and that's what my blog was about. If you haven't had a chance to read it, you can go back. It's called Let's Blow Bubbles. But what I did was I went ahead and prepped my page with the gesso that I usually use, the white gesso, and then I'm just adding some different colors of acrylic paint. And I'm mostly adding it with a roller and a credit card to just get some layers and textures on the page. And I'm also using my fingers as well. And that's just going to give me a good, solid, colorful background for the bubbles that I'm going to draw and color in, so that I can remind myself that we can make bubbles out of anything in life, right? Even dandelions. And I think that it's important that we remember that right now during this time where we're all focused on fears and what might happen for the future, that we remember that, we ask all the time, how many times have you said to yourself, "I wish life would just slow down so that I could get some rest," or "I just wish I had more time to spend with my kids or my husband," or whatever. And now we have that time. So let's embrace this moment and be happy that God has given us the opportunity to slow life down and to begin to focus on some of the things that are important to us in life that we don't always get to see and notice. So I poured some of my Stays On ink onto my page and just did some little splatters to give another layer of texture to the page. You guys know how much I love texture and splashes of color and things like that. So this is just, remember, the smaller the brush you use, the smaller the splatters will be. So if you use a large brush, you're going to get larger splatters. And I didn't get it on video, but I used a pink ink also and did the same thing with the splatters with the pink shimmer ink. And then I took some bubble wrap and I just touched my Distress inks and I started to give it a little bit of bubbles in black over the color, so that it had even more texture and brought out more of the theme of the bubbles, which is what I'm going with for this design. So once I did that, of course, you have to get it dry and make sure that everything is nice and solid before you start putting your main elements on. So I did that, got it nice and dry, and have it ready. And then I selected various sizes of circles, a cup. I did a lid off of a toothpick holder, and I also took a little plastic lid that goes over like a container, and then one of my paint lids, and then one of my spray ink lids as well. So I had a whole bunch of different shapes of, not shapes, but different sizes of circles. And I wasn't sure how many I would use or not, but I wanted to go ahead and have an option of a bunch of different ones and different sizes for the bubbles. So I diluted some black acrylic ink and spread it out so that it was big enough for me to dip my circles in. And I did dilute it quite a bit because I wanted it to be, I wanted my circles to be able to pick up the ink pretty easily. And so I went ahead, first I painted it on, but then I realized that wasn't going to work very well. So then I just started kind of dipping it in there after that because the circles weren't coming out very solid. They were like having gaps and stuff in them, and it was really frustrating. So then I just started dipping it directly into the paint, and that worked much, much better. And I just started doing that with various sizes because bubbles are not all the same size. So I wanted to have a bunch of different sizes and different differences in the way that the bubbles connected with one another. So I just used a bunch of the circles and did that. And then I ended up not using the plastic lid. It was too close to the same size as the larger one, so I didn't use that. I did, however, take the lid of one of my markers and do some white bubbles as well underneath and inside some of the big circles because I wanted to have a little bit of a different feel for the color of the bubbles and also have kind of a layered look on the bubbles. So I went ahead and just dipped that pen into some white paint, and I did not have to dilute this paint because it was more of a it was just more diluted. It was a different brand, so it was more diluted. So once I got all of that dry, I took my paint pen, my white paint pen, and I started highlighting in the insides of each of the bubbles. And I did that on each one of the black bubbles that I had created on every size. So I went through and just did a top and bottom or side and top highlight. Keep in mind when you're highlighting, you want to choose which bubble that is going to be on top and which is going to be on bottom so that when you're drawing your highlighted lines, you can break them up accordingly. So once I finished doing the white highlights, I went ahead and took the background colors of the paints that I used and I started highlighting the bubbles in those colors with a paintbrush. So I just took a small paintbrush, dipped it in the color that I wanted, and I just kind of randomly put the colors into the bubbles. There was no really rhyme or reason. Like I didn't say, okay, all these size bubbles are going to have this color or anything like that. I just kind of randomly decided or decided to just put, green here and there, and then I went on to the yellow, and then I went on to the pink, and then I went on to the blue, and that just kind of blended them a little bit into the background and kind of pulled the whole thing together because the white stood out so much that I felt like that the bubbles needed to kind of look a little more transparent and blend a little bit more. So I went ahead and decided to use the background colors to blend them in and kind of bring it all together into one cohesive page. And then of course, once I was done with the colors, you can see it kind of blended everything really nicely. And I took my white pen and I just wrote, "Let's blow bubbles," inside the two big bubbles, just to remind myself that that page was all about remembering the moment that I spent with my grandson out in the yard, and how amazing God is to allow me to enjoy those moments of innocence and fun, and just, it was just a moment. And I know some of you guys probably won't understand it, but it just totally was for me. And so I really wanted to remember that. If you read my blog post, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about, and the fact that, you know, God really wants us to meditate on these positive things and focus on the positive things in life. So I hope this inspired you. I hope you'll try something like this on your own, and you guys have a great week.